Distinguished delegates, I'm delighted and honored to be here today to discuss such a critical topic. In fact, frankly, the title of the session, Vaccines Without Borders, could not be more critical because it's quite clear now that the acute phase of this pandemic cannot be brought to an end without COVID-19 vaccines and without the entire world having access to them. So far, much of the world's attention has been on the so-called race to develop a vaccine. But without doing a disservice to the formidable challenges involved in achieving this, and I'll let my fellow speakers like Dr. Kim talk to that, the development of a vaccine alone will not end this global crisis. Because we don't just need COVID-19 vaccines. We need them rapidly, we need lots of them, billions of doses, and we need them to be made available to and to reach people in every corner of the globe. At an early stage of this pandemic, world leaders recognized that this called for a global solution, and this week we are on the cusp of realizing that solution, Kovacs. An extraordinary and unique global collaboration, Kovacs will guarantee people in all countries, regardless of their ability to pay, rapid, fair, and equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines as soon as they are available. So let's talk a little bit about Kovacs. With more than 170 countries now involved, including our hosts here today, the Republic of Korea, and collectively representing about 70% of the global population, it's hard to do justice to how extraordinary this is. At a time when almost every country is experiencing an unprecedented existential crisis, governments are looking beyond the immediate needs of their citizens in favor of a solution that benefits everyone. While this is not the first time the world has rallied to solve a global crisis, it is the first time we've faced such an immediate and pernicious global threat. Nothing like this has ever before been attempted and in such a short time frame. And if successful, Kovacs will be the first time the world has come together to ensure that the poorest people get access to a life-saving health intervention at the same time as the wealthiest in a global pandemic. Coordinated by my organization, Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, along with the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, so-called CEPI, and the World Health Organization, Kovacs acts as a platform that will support the research, development, and manufacturing of a wide range of COVID-19 vaccine candidates and negotiate their pricing through the Kovacs facility and enable the world's poorest countries to get the same access to these vaccines via a separate funding mechanism, the Gavi Kovacs Advanced Market Commitment, or AMC. With the world's largest and most diverse portfolio of COVID-19 candidate vaccines, there are currently 9 already in development and a further 9 under evaluation. The Kovacs facility maximizes our chance of success in getting COVID-19 vaccines that are both safe and effective and having the doses as we need as soon as they are approved. One of the reasons we need Kovacs is that even though there are now more than 200 COVID-19 candidate vaccines in development and 35 in clinical trials, 9 now in phase 3 trials, the vast majority of this large set of vaccines will ultimately fail. It's not a reflection of the talent and expertise of the research community and vaccine manufacturers, who incidentally have responded to this global crisis with unprecedented speed, but rather it's an indication of just how difficult vaccine development is. Based on historical precedent, those at the preclinical stage have less than a 10% chance of succeeding, while those that make it into clinical trials have about a 20% chance. So even though many wealthy governments are negotiating bilateral deals with individual vaccine manufacturers to secure vaccine doses for their citizens, there's no guarantee that they will ultimately be able to get them and use them. Because of this, Kovacs serves as a global insurance policy, guaranteeing countries with bilateral deal vaccine doses, even if those deals fail, and throwing a lifeline to the majority of countries in the world who otherwise would have limited or no access at all to COVID-19 vaccines. This last point I cannot emphasize enough. Kovacs is not just one solution, it is the only global solution. Without it, there's a real risk that the majority of people in the world will go unprotected against the SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes COVID-19, allowing it and its impact to continue unabated. The other critical aspect of Kovacs is its speed. Given the continued and ongoing rapid escalation of COVID-19, with the number of deaths approaching 1 million and more than 28 million people infected, and with an economic impact that is costing $500 billion every month in lost GDP, we need vaccines as soon as possible. Yet normal vaccine development is a lengthy process. It can take more than a decade for a vaccine to be developed, go through clinical trials, and get the regulatory approval. With COVID-19 vaccines, we're trying to get there within an 18-month time frame. To do that, we're accelerating the process in a number of ways while ensuring that safety remains a number one priority. First, at the preclinical stage, where vaccine candidates are being moved forward quickly without spending too much time tinkering around with the candidates. Then there are adaptive clinical trials, which effectively involves modifying them as we go, for example, by adding people from different risk groups. And different phases of clinical trials are being carried out in parallel, almost at the same time instead of sequentially. All of this is making it possible to shave years off the development timeline. Similarly, Kovacs is working with the regulators to find ways to trim fat off some of the regulatory processes involved in getting these vaccines approved. But of course, we want this to speed things up, but we want to make sure we don't compromise safety at all. Then there's the speed at which vaccines are manufactured. Normally, vaccine manufacturers are reluctant to invest in large-scale production facilities until their vaccine has received regulatory approval. If this were to happen with COVID-19 vaccines, it would inevitably lead to a delay in vaccine shortages, initially at least. This would only prolong the acute phase of the pandemic and cost lives. The Kovacs facility aims to prevent that by creating incentives for manufacturers to invest in production capacity before the vaccines are approved. In a nutshell, that is how Kovacs will get us the vaccines we need as quickly as possible, with an initial aim of having 2 billion doses by the end of 2021, which should be enough to protect high-risk and vulnerable people as well as frontline health workers. Self-financing wealthier countries will only pay for the vaccines they want or need through the Kovacs facility, but their upfront payments will help get the gears turning so we're able to produce enough for all countries, including those that cannot afford to pay. These will be financed largely through overall official development assistance, or ODA, through the Gavi Kovacs AMC. But we're not quite there yet. Let's talk about distribution. We still need the remaining self-financing countries to seal and sign the legally binding agreements to get critical mass for the facility. This is critical so we can secure agreements with manufacturers to scale up capacity before their vaccines are ready. And there is work to be done to find the remaining AMC funding to support vaccine procurement for countries that need assistance. Then comes the task of delivery. The challenges this pose rarely get talked about, and yet once COVID-19 vaccines are ready, we're looking at the single largest global deployment of vaccines the world has ever seen. Gavi, which has 20 years of experience at this, having helped vaccinated more than 820 million children and preventing more than 14 million deaths, will be at the forefront of this effort. But even so, it will be a mammoth task requiring transport, logistics, cold chain, trained healthcare workers who must be equipped with the PPE they need to keep them safe, and much more to make it happen. Under normal circumstances, having all these pieces in place can be difficult, But given the disruption the pandemic has already caused to existing immunization programs across the world and the infodemic of misinformation that is threatening to undermine public confidence in vaccine safety, that task will be made all the more challenging. We estimate that 80 million children are already at risk of missing out on essential routine vaccinations against other vaccine-preventable diseases, such as measles, diphtheria, and polio. There may be a variety of reasons for this, from parents being unable to or too afraid to attend immunization sessions due to COVID-19, or because health workers lack the proper protective equipment or have been redeployed to COVID-19 related duties, or they may be infected themselves. Whatever the reason, this creates the dangerously explosive potential for further outbreaks of other diseases to occur in addition to the pandemic. In fact, research suggests that while suspending routine immunization sessions may reduce the risk of spreading COVID-19, for every COVID-19 related death that it prevents comes with an increased risk of about 84 deaths from other diseases. This is one reason why Gavi is working so hard right now with partners to keep routine immunization programs running as part of its core mission, a mission that the government of the Republic of Korea has long supported since 2010 as the first donor to Gavi from Asia. In fact, just earlier this year during Gavi's Global Vaccine Summit, the government made its largest 5-year commitment of $30 million to support Gavi's target of reaching 1.1 billion children by 2025, which would save a cumulative 22 million lives. Even before the pandemic, this target was ambitious, but given the current crisis, it will inevitably be made harder. Regardless, our success remains as important, if not more so, because keeping these routine immunization programs and health systems functioning will play an important part of the preparations needed to deliver COVID-19 vaccines. Because ultimately it's the same infrastructure that will form the backbone of the distribution network required to carry out that deployment. If we allow them to collapse due to COVID-19, then this will significantly hinder our ability to halt the virus and end this crisis. It would be an utter tragedy if we got so far as to develop COVID-19 vaccines, make them available to everyone through Kovacs, and then fall at the last hurdle by failing to deliver them as quickly and efficiently as possible. I thank you very much for your attention and look forward to working all of you on this incredibly important task.
The World Knowledge Forum,